I've really been looking forward to seeing all of you. And I have to say, when I got on the plane to be here today, I did not imagine to learn so much about the sexual habits of fruit flies. It was not on my list of to-dos, but I have to say that I found it absolutely fascinating. So just quick show of hands, how many people were in this room before lunch and heard the talk? Excellent, we can take some shortcuts. My name is Jespersen. I worked with Maple Leaf for 11 years before moving back to Europe, and one of the things that I learned the hard way there was the importance of food safety. I shared this story with you before lunch around how Maple Leaf was the sole responsible companies for taking the lives of 23 Canadians back in 2008. I guarantee you, I can tell you the exact color of the sky and the shape of the tree that I passed when I heard on the phone that we had been linked via DNA testing to this particular accident. What I'm here to share with you today, and what I hope that we can have many more conversations about, is how you can avoid a similar type of incident. Nobody should ever be in the situation of having your products linked to the death of others. The death of those consumers who wake up every day, eat food just like the rest of us, trusting those that made it that this is going to be safe. So I hope that we can share a little bit, along with my co-presenters this afternoon, that can help you from avoiding that particular situation. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between a risk culture and an issues culture. Show of hands, do you think they're different? Different? Yes? No? Yes? They're different? Okay. I know it's late in the day. I know I'm standing between you and the post-event refreshments. Work with me for the next 15 minutes, and I guarantee it'll be worthwhile. When you talk about an issue-based culture, you talk about solving problems reactively. Problems happen and you react to them. So you might have product in the field that has been contaminated with a biological hazard, could be a pathogen, and you have to recall it. That's an issues-based culture. It's an immature culture. Keep in mind that when we talk about culture, it's not about saying that somebody did something wrong. Cultures happen because we have decided something is okay to do. And we keep doing it over and over again in a group of people. So it's not that somebody comes to work one day and says, hey, we need an issues-based culture in my company. No, it's something that's evolved over time. And therefore, when we talk about shifting to more of a risk-based culture, it takes time and effort. When you're in a risk-based culture, you look at the risks associated with everything you do. You look at your products, you look at the processes, and you look at the people that are in your company and you say, what kind of risks are associated with this? You sit down in your cross-functional team or you gather some people from outside your company and you talk through what kind of risks might we be looking at. And when it comes to food safety, you look at that from the classic three, right? So what are the kinds of biological hazards we might be introducing because we handpick our products, or because of the type of water that we use, or because of where our fields are situated. You look at the processes that you're using. So is your equipment actually going to be cleaned appropriately, or are you just transferring bacteria every time you put a piece of product into it? You look at the people. Do we have a lot of transitory staff in our company? Do we have constantly new people that we need to onboard into our culture? And so, how do we do that so that it's consistent? You play out all of those scenarios in advance, and then you plan for what do you need to do to prevent that from happening, from those risks to actually become an issue for the products that you send out every day. That's a risk-based culture. It takes investment and it takes patience from those that lead risk-based organizations. Does this make sense to everybody? Yeah. Excellent, love it. So when we talk about measuring these types of things, I mentioned maturity before, and I showed this very briefly in the previous presentation as well. So we have 5 stages of maturity. Matures over time, 3 to 8 years. And you can slide up and down this scale, right? So this is important. You slide up and down. So you need to keep focusing on maturing your culture, or at least sustaining the current state of maturity. It won't stay there if you take your eyes off it. It's no different than relationships and friendships and fitness. You have to work at it and you have to have constant focus on it. So when we're looking at it stage 1, you are largely reacting to external drivers. So it could be regulators. You have new regulations, you change what goes on in the company because, golly, we have to do that, right? Could be a customer that comes along and says, we need you to focus on this. You change your systems, you change your ways of doing things. But it's largely reactive. And do you know what? It is actually hugely expensive to be in this situation. Not to mention it's highly risky because you don't have control over those processes that could potentially cause you to send out unsafe product. As you move up this wonderful curve, you get into the blurbs of the projects, right? We kick off projects, we have a good time with them because now we have a team, we're focusing, we're making improvement. It does not get you into the very high level of performance because you might be focusing on a variable at a time. What also happens, as we talked a little bit about before lunch, projects are great when they happen, and sometimes we forget them when they close. So we find these great solutions, project closes, and we run off to the next project, right? And then we start all over again. Get into phase 3 up here. That's where we start to see a little bit more improvement. So we're building systems, we're educating, we're onboarding staff into who we are as a company. In Maple Leaf, we were probably in this stage 3 when we had our incident. But, Lone, how can you say that? Because you had such a terrible outcome of it. Because we actually had good measurement systems. We had commitment from management. Don't you love that term? Commitment from management. I'm sorry to say, managers in the room, but commitment is cheap if you're not willing to go kick the door in and say, what are we actually doing? What's happening? And our management made the big assumption that everything was being taken care of. Because, guess what? We have a food safety and quality department. So because we have that, then we're okay. But in fact, food safety and quality managers and departments can only be so much for a company. If you're not spreading it out to all the other functions that are touching product as it goes through the process of either picking, processing, or selling, there's no way that you can have good control over your food safety risks. When you have those silos broken down and you start seeing it more internalized in everything you do every day, that's when you get into the 4s and 5s of stage of maturity. That's also where you start seeing the highest increase in performance. Because now we're looking for consistency. Things are being done the same way every time it's supposed to be done. New people are onboarded into a culture that says this is how we're doing things around here. The highest performance also comes with the lowest amount of wasted revenue and cost of poor quality. Are we doing good? Yes? Excellent. I love the fact that the MC is the one that's yelling the loudest. Clearly he wants this to go by really fast. So I'm going to ask you all to stand for me for a second. So stand up, please. I know, it's much to ask at this time of day. So ask yourself this question. No, we're not doing stretching, but it's a good one. I like it. Ask yourself this question. In your organization, regardless of what it is, I want you to think about what stage of maturity you think your culture is in. This is not just for processes, not just for growers. This can be applied to anybody. For food safety and quality, what stage do you think you're in? If you think you're at stage 1, would you kindly sit? If you're stage 2, would you kindly sit? I'll give you my card afterwards. Did you just get tired at the back from standing? Is that what's happening here? Okay. If you're stage 3, will you kindly sit? Stage 4, please have a seat. Okay, fantastic. So for those of you who cannot, so I can see everybody here because in this session we actually have control over the lights. So there's no 5s. There's no 1s. There is, compared to the other countries I've tried to do the same in, this is obviously not a scientific exercise, but you seem to have more 4s and you also have a large group of 3s. So this is really interesting because it would indicate that you're sort of a little bit either, actually 2 things could be happening here. You could just generally be more mature in Australia, which I have to say, if anybody listened to the breakfast speaker, I would tend to disagree with. You could also just be overrating yourself a little bit, which is just a social tendency that we have as human beings. Especially in groups, we like to overestimate ourselves a little bit. But keep your number in mind, because let's overlay this fabulous bold black curve, which has no legend on it, which will be fixed. But this is cost of poor quality in percent of sales. So based on your organizations and your own estimates, you can actually now put a value on your maturity of food safety culture. So if you are in this stage 2 to 3, you pour down the drain every year 12 to 18% of your sales because of poor quality. It is not hard to see when you look at a curve like this and a trend that is overlaid with maturity like this, that spending money in advancing and maturing your culture all of a sudden doesn't look so bad. And what's beautiful about this particular curve as well is that it's completely agnostic to the size of your company. Doesn't matter how big or small you are, 18% of sales that's wasted is 18% of sales wasted. Make sense? Yeah. Do you want to reevaluate your stage of maturity now? No? You're good. Yay. Excellent. Fantastic. So, at the risk of never having anybody to have lunch with again, so I apologize in advance for these fine people from One Harvest, I am going to go a little quicker through this. I had a great chance to just speak with Sam from One Harvest. Is Sam in the audience? I see one of Sam's colleagues back there. So Sam had a really good story that he did permit me to share as well. And it's because when we talk about maturing culture and talk about whether you actually have an emerging risk, you have to look at how you in your company evaluate and measure food safety culture. One of the things that Sam shared was that, well, we used to penalize our suppliers, hold me honest here, One Harvest team, penalize our suppliers if we had foreign material coming in with the supplied product financially. So there would be a financial fine if you supplied material that had a product that had foreign material in it. And one of the things we got talking about was that wasn't such a great measure, or it wasn't such a great way to foster the behaviors that they were looking for, because a supplier would do pretty much what it took to get the product into the company, and that meant that sometimes you didn't get the collaboration that you were looking for. So you're actually putting up a little bit of a barrier as opposed to saying, how do we solve for this problem together? I think in itself that Sam was so comfortable sharing this story says to me, well, we're dealing with a mature company here who has a critical view on their own systems and performance. When you see a lower maturity company, I often hear a lot of defensiveness because we don't actually really know, but she wants to know, so I have to come up with something. What I heard when I spoke to Sam and his colleagues were, do you know what? We used to do this, we found out that it didn't get us the behaviors that we were looking for, so we had to come up with something different. We did something a little similar in Maple Leaf. We, after the recall, we were looking at our metrics as well, and we said, so we want to instill a culture where people are really critically looking at their processes. So a little bit like what One Harvest was explaining to me, we want collaboration so that we can really get to the root of the problem. You cannot get to the root of the problem if you're not willing to look at the ugly side that you might be finding in your digging, right? So we used to have this metric where we said, do you know what? Visual pre-op inspection, so every time that somebody had been in a plant and cleaned out the plant, another person went in with a flashlight, looked for debris, and said, "Are we good? Are we not good? Do we have a clean plant? Can we start running?" The success measure for that was 100%. Needed to get to 100%. I looked at all of this data, and I looked at it across the last 3 years. We had almost consistently 100% the first time. I said, "This can't be. It is not humanly possible to inspect to 100% consistently." So we dug into it a little bit. And we decided to say, do you know what? What's more important here? Is it more important that we have plants that can consistently report 100% compliance, or is it more important that we can say, you're looking hard, we know you're being critical of your own processes, and we decided this the last. We want people to look really hard. Want to know that you, if you don't think you know enough to look hard and critical at your own processes, then you're going to tell somebody, and we're going to help you understand how to do that. So we said to get maximum score in our scorecard for food safety, we would give you a higher score if you had less than 80% compliant than if you were at 100%. We had mutiny. Where plant managers absolutely they were disgraced by this. How can you do that? How can I shoot for less than 80%? But the thing, over time, it evolved into that you were being rewarded for being critical on looking at your own processes. That is way more important than knowing that people can get to 100% compliance. If you ask me for any kind of food safety and quality performance, the worst thing we've ever done as professionals in this field is to come up with saying 100% is your target. Because as human beings, we will get to 100%. You might not like the way that I got there. I might not want to tell you, but I will get there. It serves absolutely no purpose if you're trying to instill a mature culture that is signified by being critical and open about your performance. I want to just close out with this fabulous story about M&Ms. How many people like M&Ms? Yeah? Is there a favorite color? Which one? I hear yellow, or anybody else? Blue? Yellow? 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 Interesting. Is that because it has peanuts in it? Yeah? Okay. Well, this is not about that. This is about this famous rock band from the US. We're back in the 70s, and they got absolutely famous for being mega divas because they refused to play if they found red M&Ms in their dressing room. They would trash, it would be all over the media, trash their dressing room if they found red M&Ms. And of course, to the average public, like all of us in this room, that would be, you know what, it's just adding to the stardom. They would do that. What most people did not know was that in their contract for any of their concerts, they had a stipulation that they didn't want to see red M&Ms. They also had pages of stipulations around safety, how to rig their stages, how to set the lighting when they played a concert. So what they knew if they found red M&Ms was they knew they were potentially dealing with somebody that had not read the contract. Therefore, it was not a safe place for their fans or for them to play a concert. It became one of the first documented cases of a leading indicator in a very, very creative way. They could check going into a dressing room, pouring out a bowl of M&Ms where the contract had been read, and if they could actually perform a safe concert for themselves and their fans. If you take anything away from this last presentation of today, I ask you to be really creative around how you measure food safety and quality in your organizations. Think about some of those red M&Ms in your culture. Be creative, share them amongst each other, because one of the things that we're struggling with right now when it comes to food safety and quality performance is we've stagnated a little bit. We have to find that next change that can get us the increased performance in food safety. And I believe, aside from not being a big fan of yellow M&Ms, that the red one could be it. Thank you very much. Oh.